Tisha B'Av, Tavshinayim Gimel. Keeps happening every year. Another year Tisha B'Av, another one. And I'd like to try to grab one aspect this year. The aspect of crying. Who's crying? Who's crying for who? We have on the one hand kinos that begin with Zechor Hashem, crying at Hashem. Hashem, remember, Meha Yalanu, what we had. We turn to the Kotel walls. We turn to Har Tzion and we say, Eli Tzion, Tzion, Eli, wail, cry, Tzion, Ve'areha, and Tzion cities, cry. We look at Har HaBayit. We look at the Beis HaMikdash. And we say, the bias, cry. Why are we turning to all these inanimate objects and telling them to cry? There's a medrash that tells, interestingly, between Plato and Yirmiyahu, that Plato sees Yirmiyahu crying at the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And he says, Yirmiyahu, you're such a smart person. What are you crying over these eitzim v'avanim, trees and stones? What are you crying about? And Yirmiyahu says to him, I'm smart. You think I'm smart? You can ask me any question in the world that you've pondered your whole life and I'll answer it right now. Plato goes ahead, says, I'll take up your challenge. And he starts asking him question after question. And Yirmiyahu answers every single thing, one after the other. And then he says, Yirmiyahu tells Plato, you think that's incredible? That I was able to answer every riddle of life? Well, you see these sticks and stones that are broken? That's where I got all my wisdom from. That's Yirmiyahu's answer to Plato. I received all my wisdom from these sticks and stones, that's why I cried. And the question is, what does Yirmiyahu mean when he says that these sticks and stones offered him this wisdom? What wisdom do you actually get from the sticks and stones? I went through one year many Holocaust stories. I was asked in a shul to deliver an explanation of a kina about the Holocaust. And I am not like many of the others that end up giving the explanation for this kina, Holocaust survivors or children of Holocaust survivors. And I felt inadequate. I don't think I'm the right person. And lo and behold, I decided I'm going to go through stories. I'm going to read books. I've done this reading before, just never in preparation for delivering a sermon about the Holocaust. And one of the things that repeated a recurring theme, was the Holocaust survivors who tell over these stories and leave us with the pain. They all end, remember. You hear that curdling cry. Remember, don't forget. And in history class, I always remember the teachers asking, what is it that you want us to remember? That it shouldn't happen again. That it shouldn't happen again. It's a history lesson. Perhaps you have control over it. Perhaps you have no control over it. You can do something. You cannot do something. History repeats itself anyway. If that's the refrain, there's apparently nothing we can do because we've been learning history for a few millennia and people keep saying it repeats itself. Secondly, I've heard people say the thing that you have to remember, they say in Yad Vashem today, is that you should not become a barbarian the way the Nazis did. Yimach Shalom. Perhaps. However, I don't believe the Holocaust is a story about not becoming barbaric, that the Jews have to learn this lesson that seems to be a bit propagandized. I think the lesson of Zechor, of remember, is that each survivor is screaming out, I don't want this to be for naught. Don't tell me my suffering had nothing to do with anything in the world. I've accomplished nothing with all my suffering. Remember, I went through this for a reason. Take my heritage, do something with it. And what is it that you can take with you? What is it that they lived for, that they suffered for? They suffered for all of Am Yisrael. Whether they were close to Hashem or perhaps distant. Whether they knew at that moment what they were screaming when they said, remember, or they perhaps wouldn't even be able to express in words what it is that they meant. What they mean is, remember to make my life meaningful. Because when you go to God and you say, so-and-so suffered for you, you have something to bring to God. You have something to bring to the table and tell Him to remember. We turn to these inanimate objects, the stones, the Beis HaMikdash, the wood, Har Zion, and we're crying. And I want to understand that there are two levels. There are two different levels of crying here on Tisha B'Av. Crying level number one is every single person crying, saying what I've lost. I've lost something. And I'm screaming, perhaps without the expression, remember what I've lost. And perhaps I don't even know what it is. Perhaps it's a little vague. But I know I've lost something big. But there's one other level that some people reach and understand, that I'm not just talking to Tzion, and I'm not just talking at Hashem with an attack. Remember what you took away from me. Remember. Every time there's Shiva, there's a relative who passed away. And it's that for that relative that we are sitting and crying. The mourning is over a certain relative who passed away. And we don't, in Shiva, say how bad it is that I've lost that brother. Look how pathetic I am now that father, that mother, that sister is no longer with us. We're saddened also by the fact that father, mother, sister, brother is no longer here for their sake. How sad, how tragic, how unfortunate they're lost. Tisha B'Av is the worst day of Shiva in the entire world. Because every single person is sitting Shiva and no one is available to pay a Shiva call. Every single one of us is sitting Shiva and you just look over at one another. Oh, you too. And perhaps the idea is, our father passed away on Tisha B'Av. Our father, the Ribono Shel Olam, lost something. And when our father, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, lost, he passed away. A piece of his existence is gone. His children were exiled, but he himself, a piece of his existence, his reality, the world doesn't recognize him anymore. We now, his children, are sitting and mourning and crying over the loss the world has had, over the tragic loss that he is gone. We're crying for Hashem. We're sitting Shiva over the Ribono Shel Olam's passing to some degree. And so now, yes, when we scream out Zachor, remember, and we turn to the Beis HaMikdash, and we turn to Har Zion, we're saying, you should cry out for us, what we have lost. However, on a certain level, we have to understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has lost. And we're crying his tears. We're crying his passing. And we want him to be reborn. We want him to come back. We want him to have a tkuma with us. with Am Yisrael, that remarriage, we'll build together. When we have that opportunity to connect to our Father in a live, living manner, when we can build that house for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and give Him the kavod that's due Him, when we can go ahead and rebuild together, it gives us knowledge that otherwise you don't have. He's a surreal figure. God is there, isn't there, maybe He's there. The knowledge of God and philosophy in the world is lacking as long as HaKadosh Baruch Hu isn't real. Yirmiyahu is crying the tears, not of Eitzim Va'avanim, the tears over the loss that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. Plato doesn't understand anything. How could you cry for sticks and stones? So Yirmiyahu informs him, at the very least, we've lost knowledge, the knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because as long as that relationship cannot be complete, the knowledge, world knowledge, is gone. We've lost something. And we should be able to cry our tears for what we've lost and continue to not have and appreciate every single day. I am not crying about Eitzim Va'avanim that were in existence 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. I'm crying over what I continually do not have and miss. And I also cry HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tears for that which He doesn't have and He doesn't appreciate. And I'm sitting Shiva for my father who perished. B'ezrat Hashem, for those that truly understand the loss, have a feeling, a desire, a tikva for that which will happen and will come. V'techazena einenu, v'shuvcha, l'tzion barachamim. All of us should rejoice and see together the return of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our midst.